Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Hello, and thank you for downloading The Bolder Woman on Wisp Sports. This is Season 1, Episode 13, and I'm Chris Stafford.
Laid all your doubts to rest. Your mind is clearer than before. Your heart is full and wanting more. Your future's at the door. Give it all you got. No hesitating. You've been waiting all your life.
Our guest this week is Canadian Masters rower Marisha Roman, who at 52 has been rowing competitively for 32 years and is still motivated to set her 4:30 a.m. alarm to go training. In 1989, she won the Royal Henley Intermediate Women's 8, and when she returned to Masters rowing in 2003, she won the age 40 plus 8s at the famous Head of the Charles Regatta in Boston 5 times with the Toronto Sculling Club. Other notable successes have been winning the Women's B8 at the Amsterdam Heineken Rovierkamp in 2018, winning medals at the US Masters Championships in 2003 with the Don Rowing Club, and in 2016 and 17 with the Masters Rowing International. In 2017, she won gold at the Royal Henley Masters Regatta in Women's C8, the gold in Masters Women's category at the Royal St John's 200th Anniversary Regatta in 2018, which was a fixed-seat boat in the world's longest-running rowing race. Marisha also excelled in canoeing, kayaking and swimming, which happens to be her winter cross-training sport of choice. She is also the co-founder of the Masters Women Competitive Athlete Network and an elected board member for Rowing Canada with the Safe Sport portfolio. In 2005, Marisha was awarded the Tom Longboat Award as the Indigenous Athlete of the Year for Canada for dragon boat paddling. Hi Marisha, and welcome to the program.
Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for welcoming me.
Well, it's great to have you as part of the Bolder Woman show and also to tell the story of yourself, not only as a Masters athlete, but also we're going to hear about the organization that you've started to build a network for Masters athletes in North America. So let's start with your passion then for water sports. Is it primarily rowing that you love the most, or is it anything to do with water?
Well, really, it is anything to do with water. It just so happens that I've been at the rowing game since 1987, so it's something that I've developed a level of proficiency in, and there are so many opportunities for training with great people, great women my age and younger and older, and also for racing and competition. It's I think rowing at the Masters level in North America and also in England and Europe. Many opportunities to compete at a high level. So that's what continues to attract me about rowing.
So you started when you were in university. So explain then, Marisha, how the continuum works then for women to be retained in the sport and into the Masters program if they're not familiar with it.
Oh, well, continuum makes it sound like there's some kind of a system or program in place, and you know, and much of it has been a happy accident for me, really. I mean, even getting into rowing to begin with was something of a happy accident. I had seen rowing races. Prior to rowing in university, I had been a carded athlete, as what we call here in Canada flat water paddling or canoe kayak, which is an Olympic sport. I had been a carded athlete at the provincial as well as national level, but was feeling by the end of my teens and starting to enter university that I kind of hit my peak, and I wasn't sure what about continuing. And as I said, I had seen rowing races, and what I noticed about rowing races was how tall rowers are by and large, and I'm almost 6 feet tall, and for a flat water paddler, that's actually above average, quite a bit above average. And so it had been in the back of my mind to say, well, I'm used to doing water sports where I sit and I look forward. How different could it be if I'm doing a water sport, sitting and looking backward? And it was really once I got in the boats in 1987 that I recognized how different it was. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it from the very first day. So I rode through university. I rode in the summers, a couple of summers, and then I, like many women, who do sports through university, or around that age in the early 20s, when I finished my undergrad, I made a choice through what are my next steps in life. And for me, my next step in life was going to law school. And so that was something that really took over my attention in my early 20s, early to mid 20s. It's in Canada, there's a 3-year degree, and at the time when I was going through law school, it was another 2 years beyond law school for me to be licensed, to be called to the bar in Ontario. And so for that 5 or 6 years time, I was pretty focused on trying to figure out what I would do with my career. And so sports, by and large, fell to the wayside. I did try running a couple of marathons and discovered, yes, I'm a person who belongs on or in water and not on land. And so I certainly kept fit, but in my late 20s, looking around at what my options were for sports, masters rowing was really not something that was happening in Ontario. And so in my late 20s, I actually returned to paddling, and in the form of dragon boat paddling. And so I did that. I had a very intense experience as a dragon boat paddler in the late 90s and early 2000s. But around 2003, in fact, I do remember talking with someone I had rowed with in university, and she said, I started going back to the rowing club, and we need more people like us down there. Why don't you come on down and try it out again? And honestly, I thought, I don't even know if I would remember how to row, because it'd been 10 years, the break that I had taken. But what I discovered when I came back to my rowing club, which is the Argonaut Rowing Club in Toronto, is that there are a lot of women my age who had similarly taken a break for a variety of reasons. Finished school, got married, had children. Finished school, pursued a career, or both of them, right? And they were occupied. And it seemed that in around early 30s, mid 30s was a time when many women were coming back to the sport of rowing. So I feel like I came back to it at just the right time. And I've been going since then. So I've been rowing again for 16 years. For a few years, I was balancing competing at a high level internationally with dragon boat paddling, for which the Canadian women's team from 2003 through 2007 was very successful at the international level. We won the world title twice in 2005, 2007, and I made the decision in 2007 that at the age of 40, it was a good time for me to, maybe leave while I was on top. And also I was, making some changes in my career, and I wanted to focus on my career. I didn't want to leave sport, and rowing was actually a sport that I could do, that I could balance maintaining my focus on my career as a lawyer and still continue to train and compete at a level that I found motivating. So that's what I've been doing since 2003. But in terms of a system, I got to tell you, I've seen a lot of changes in masters rowing in Canada, certainly over the last 15, 16 years, that there's a lot of people who come back to the sport because of the opportunity to train with like-minded people, and to have fun competing and to be challenged in training and competition. The club system has, opened up to the idea of masters rowing. That wasn't something that the rowing clubs were really understanding. Were focused. The rowing clubs in the 90s and early 2000s were really focused on, well, we've got juniors and we're moving juniors up to the competitive and helping to support them as they pursue their national team dreams. We don't really know what to do with masters. And so, we've kind of come back. I can't say I'm a leader in that necessarily. I'm certainly part of the critical mass, if you will, who have come back to the sport and have created a space for ourselves within rowing clubs. And I'm happy to see that it has grown and it continues to grow. One place I will say where they really seem to have a great handle on Masters rowing is in the U.S. And I have competed a couple of times at the U.S. Masters Championships, and those are fantastic events. The head of the Charles has a really, features Masters events as well. Gives us equal, opportunity to race, and that's something that you could see when you create the right environment for Masters athletes, that kind of rigorous and challenging competitive environment. You're going to get a good experience for everybody. So I will say that I've certainly enjoyed going to the States to compete as a master.
What was it that was the basic appeal of rowing then? You obviously have a leaning towards water sports, but the difference between, as you say, going forwards and going backwards in water, but what is it about rowing?
Oh, geez. There is... I've this is my own image, my own interpretation now, so I'm not going to load this on anybody else. But when I compare flatwater kayaking to rowing, and I'm trying to describe what it feels like to people, by analogy, I describe rowing as like ballet, and flatwater paddling is kind of like tap dancing. Tap dancing, there's the freedom and there's a lot of room for style and individuality, and you make a lot of noise and splash a lot of water around, and there's just a little less sense of control, right? And because it's you and your paddle and you sit in the boat and you go. Whereas rowing, you have this long oar. I'm trying to remember the length of the oar. It's probably 16 or 17 feet long, and the oar is connected to a rigger, which is connected to the boat. You slide back and forth on a fixed slide on a seat, and your feet are connected to the boat. There is a real sense that you're connected to machinery, and everything you're trying to do when you work on rowing is by degrees, and you pay attention to these just very minute details as you're rowing. And so coming from, a swimming background, similarly, there's a sense of, I'm moving my body through water. I'm not attached to a piece of a mechanism of any kind, right? And so coming from that background to rowing was a real sea change, in addition to going backwards, but it was a real sea change in my understanding of how my body moves. And so you are adapting your body to move as efficiently as you can to take advantage of the machinery, of the mechanism around you. And it's every stroke, you really focus on every stroke. I couldn't remember every stroke in a paddling race, but I can tell you I can separate and remember individual singular strokes in a race or in a practice, right? They really hit you that, okay, that was a good stroke. Now I want to do it again, and I want to do it again. And there's that over the course of time has really influenced me. It's something that I've adapted to because I think I tend to think that way. I like that kind of analytical approach, and it's also influenced me to be more analytical because that is something that I focus on every morning, that I'm trying to get through. And like, if I do a good stroke, I want to repeat it. And there is a sensational feeling when you can put a series of good strokes together. It really, I remember actually as a novice athlete, one morning before our finals, and I was sitting in 6 feet, and I remember the woman in front of me, she was a redhead, and it was a windy day, and the coach told us, he said, okay, I just want you, before you go back to the dock, it was still quite dark, because it would have been about maybe 6 o'clock in the morning in the fall, like October, and he said, I just want you to do a start and 10. So you do 4 kind of strokes to lift the boat out of the water. They're sort of they're kind of, half strokes, if you will, and then you build to full strokes. And so you do 4 and 10 would be 4 of these build strokes, and then 10 sprint strokes to get the boat up to speed. He said, then I want you to let it run with, as we say, the oars to the gunnel. So you put your handle to the gunnel so the oars are not touching the water. Well, we did those 14 strokes, and then we put our oars to the gunnels, and there was no sound. And I'm actually getting goosebumps as I'm thinking about it, because I remember in that moment that I'm looking at the woman and her hair in front of me as we're going, and the wind is pushing her hair forward, and I could feel that I'm in perfect sync with her, and she's in perfect sync with the person in front of her. And it felt like flying. It felt like flying on the water when everybody gets those good strokes and you can do it together. And so that's the kind of thing that catches you. It catches you in your heart. It catches you in your gut, and that's what keeps me motivated and make sure that I don't push the snooze button when the alarm goes off at 4:42 in the morning, because I'm looking forward to, I'm looking forward to those moments when I'm on the water with other people.
I would imagine it is that synchronicity. So, I mean, if you looked at, say, on a daily practice rate of rowing, how many out of 10 strokes do you think you would get perfect now? I mean, what do you analyze it to that extent of how, so that you know what you've achieved after one training session?
Well, as an athlete who is facing age and changes, what my standard of perfect is maybe changing as well. But I can say, like, for example, when I look at our practice this morning, that we did I think we did 10 or 11 1-minute pieces, 1 minute on, 1 minute off. And certainly the first 3 or 4 were a little on the rough side as we're, getting accustomed to each other. But for those last 6 or 7 pieces, there would be at least over a minute, which is 26, 27, 28 strokes. That was our stroke rate. We would probably, this early in the season, I think a few of those we did at least half, where it was that boat felt like it was flying over the water, that the oars aren't touching, there's not a sound, there's just, everything is moving together. The finish, you can hear the sound of the finish moving together. You can hear the chuck as the oar hits the water, and it was together. And so it's I can't say that there's a formula, because rowing is also, it's an outdoor sport and it's on the water. So one day it's windy, one day it's rainy, one day there might be sleet, one day there might be a lot of waves. There's always some kind of challenge from nature that, that is, you have to deal with, as well as trying to move. If you're an 8, you're trying to move with 8 bodies and a coxswain together. If you're in a 4, you're trying to move with 4 bodies, There's so many challenges to rowing and variables to rowing.
Now, which are you rowing, 4s or 8s?
Primarily 8s at this time of year.
Okay.
In Canada, we have something called cold water rules. so this morning when we went down to the rowing club, I think it was about 6 degrees Celsius, which is on the cool side, and the water is also around that temperature, or maybe a little bit higher. So, early in the season, we tend to stay in the big boats, and then on weekends, and as it gets warmer, we can move into to smaller boats. But there's something about an 8. An 8 is a really, really fun and frustrating boat. It's fun when everything works, right? And you gelled as a crew, you coalesced as a crew. But if you're in a boat with, and it's not working, wow, it really doesn't work.
Right. So if you were to start rowing then, if I was to go down to a rowing club and start rowing, would that be easier then to join 8s?
Probably, as at my club, the Argonaut Rowing Club, and many other clubs around Toronto, we have something called the Learn to Row program, which is I think it's a 6 or 7 week. You come down once or twice a week, and you get into a crew. And yes, the best boat for people to get into to learn is the 8. Right, they're very stable boats. They can accommodate many water and wind conditions. It's a very rare occurrence that an 8 would tip or swamp or anything like that. So that would be, and that was how I learned. We all sat in an 8, and here's the oar, here's your clogs. We didn't have shoes back then. We had wooden clogs in the bottom of the boat to strap our feet into, and off you go.
Right.
So. Yeah, it would be exactly the same as what you would do now and Learn to Row.
Okay. Now, you mentioned coaching then. Are you Are you with a coach regularly? Are you training for specific races this season? What does that look like for you now, Marisha? You said it's the beginning of the season for you.
Yeah, so it's the beginning of our on-water season. We've been training indoors all winter, so very happy to get outside. And so I can say in the last couple of years, my friends and I have decided to go on rowing adventures. And starting in 2017, we went to English Masters Henley at the Royal Henley course in Oxford-on-Thames, and that's like going to Valhalla for rowing. It was a phenomenal experience. And we did very well there. We won our category, our age category, which I think was C, in an 8. And then we had a little holiday after, and we trained specifically for that crew to go to English Henley. And then the year after, which would have been last year, we 6 other girlfriends and I went to St. John's, Newfoundland, to North America's longest running, oldest regatta called the Royal St. John's Regatta. It was the 200th anniversary of the regatta. And I know that people from other parts of Canada have come to St. John's for the regatta and sat in a boat and rowed. But apparently in 200 years, we were the first crew from away, where all of us, all 6 rowers, were from away. And that was a very different format of a race from what I'm normally used to, which the normal rowing race, the sprint races are 1,000 meters, and then we have a fall racing season called the head season, when there are 5-kilometer long races. And the Royal St. John's is for women is you're in a boat with 6 people, and there's no sliding seat, so you're kind of sliding a little bit back and forth on a fixed seat, which is challenging. And you row up 600 meters, you turn around, you do a 180 around a fixed buoy, and then you race back to essentially, the start and the finish line are the same. And so that was quite a different way to stop and do a turnaround in the middle of a race. I've never done that before. And again, we were very lucky, and we won our category, our age category there. We missed out on the grand final, but we're very happy with our results. And then also last year we went to Amsterdam to something, their spring opener, which is the first week of March every year, called I think it's the Heineken Rovierkamp, and it's the biggest regatta in the Netherlands, where there are many hundreds, if not thousands, of competitors. What I've heard is that every single 8 in the country of the Netherlands shows up in Amsterdam for this regatta, and it's a fantastic spectacle of a race over 2 days. There's different formats, and again, we won our age group over there. So I this is also what keeps me in rowing, is these opportunities to have rowing adventures. But I can say every single year, the primary focus of my rowing season is the head of the Charles Regatta, which is I think it's in its 55th or 56th year this year in Boston. And so that's I think the third weekend in Boston every single year. And that's North America's used to be the largest one-day regatta. Now it's North America's largest 2-day regatta. And that's also quite a spectacle. If you have any interest of what rowing could look like, then, please make your way to Boston the third weekend of every October.
And in terms of prize money, then, I guess this is a sport of passion, right? I can't imagine there's a lot of cash involved.
Honor. It's a sport of honor.
It's pure honor.
And sometimes that's questionable as well. But no, this is all amateur athletics. In the history of rowing, I guess famously, Grace Kelly's father was a professional rower and would go and race in competitions in I think it was the 1930s, and did quite well, made money doing it. But no, that's long since stopped. So this is just amateur rowing, and I don't know if there is. I'm trying to think if I've ever heard of there being prize money for rowing a rowing race. I know, for example, when we won our age group, we certainly got some beer at the Heineken Rovierkamp. That was we got a beer glass and some beer, and that was a pretty good prize in my book. So.
Right. So the 4 a.m. alarm is totally self-inflicted torture.
Yes. Yeah, now
Okay.
You're making me question myself.
So
Maybe
let's
there's
look
something
at
more productive I could be doing with my time.
So you mentioned there the age groups. Explain those to us, how they work in Masters program.
Sure, and they're. I'm not a numbers person, but I guess the starting age for Masters is something that does shift between sports. But I would say, by and large, Masters in most cases is considered 25. Roughly 25 and up. I think Masters at the head of the Charles in Boston is you must be over 30 to row in the Masters category. But for some sports like swimming, for example, I swam as a Masters athlete when I was 22. So Masters starts at 20 in rowing, in swimming. But usually I think it goes in 5-year increments. So it would be 25 to 29, 30 to 34, 35 to 39, if I'm doing the math right? So in each of those, like you've got AA, which is in your 20s, and then I think A starts at 30 to 34, and then B is 35 to 39, and C is 40 to 44. Now, those are age groups, and you can race in those age groups when you're the age, and you can also race in those age groups if you're older, if you choose to, right? So, and sometimes there's categories that are more competitive than other categories, and so I myself am 52, and I race in the 40 plus category at the head of the Charles. There is a 50-plus category that, in fact, is becoming very, very competitive. So we may be transitioning to that category at some point near in the future. But for the most part, you kind of look at, who you have in your crew and what's the best available age category that kind of goes with the average age of the people in your crew. That's sort of how we do things. These age categories go in the 5-year increments all the way up to, I think it's K or L or something, people in their 90s. And my first Masters Regatta in U.S. Masters in 2003, when we went to Virginia, outside of Washington, D.C., there was a whole heap of male single rowers, so single scullers, in the 80 and 90 plus category. It was quite fantastic to see. So that's really inspiring when you see people who are in that, in their 90s continuing to compete.
How often do you need to train then? Is this a daily ritual? And the second part to that question is there any cross training involved for this, Marisha? Right.
So certainly we try and get out as often as possible. And the thing about a rowing crew is because it's 8 people who are moving independently and need to develop that synchronicity, that takes time together. You need to find the right combination of people. You need to find the right order for people in the boat. Oftentimes I'm in stroke seat, and that's something that I'm used to, and I've developed a level of proficiency at, and I also like being in that seat. So some people like being in bow. And also this time of the year, you go out when the weather will cooperate as well. So there are some days when it's windy and we get blown off the water or can't get out. Other days when it's really wavy, et cetera. In terms of cross training, that really comes into effect in the winter. As everybody probably knows, we have some long winters here in Canada. So we get off the water in late October, early November, and we're doing winter training until, this year we didn't get out in the water until April. So that's many, many months of rowing machines and running and kind of CrossFit, high intensity interval training routines that we do. I know a number of people who take the winter to do cross-country skiing, which is a really effective cross training and also gets you outside. People take up running and snowshoeing. I myself in the winters, I have done competitive masters swimming in the winters in the past, and I find that that's a really good cross training for me. So, but rowing is definitely one of those sports. Just the nature of it has demands time on the water. in the crew and the boat that you want to race in.
And it has its demands on the body too. I hear you have to have a strong back for rowing, strong arms and shoulders too. What are the downfalls of and the after effects, should we say, especially as you age?
Right. Yeah, and that's certainly something that I'm living with. I'm fortunate and I think because I came from a sport where it was primarily upper body focused, swimming and paddling, kayaking, and dragon boat paddling really tax from your hips up, right? And your legs are there performing sort of more of a supportive role, if you will, although a strong supportive role, but rowing is kind of the opposite, right? And so I've heard some proportionalities thrown out in terms of legs to upper body, and I think people usually land in the 60 to 70% legs and 40 to 30% upper body, right, in terms of its taxing. But if you think of that, the connector piece is your core, right? And posture is something that's very important in the rowing stroke, and to maintain that posture to protect your core and your primarily your lower back. So if there is a weak point in the link in around your lower back, yes, that is something that can be impacted, and I have heard a number of people talk about that. Having to nurse a sore back, and that's certainly something that I've lived with. But otherwise, it being a non-impact sport, it's something that's quite ideal for athletes, for anybody really at any level and ability and strength to be able to take on. And I will say one thing is that in terms of adaptation to various abilities, rowing is something that has a very strong presence in the para sports for a number of reasons, right? So whether it's a visual or a hearing impairment or a physical impairment, there are many ways that rowing can be adapted to accommodate for this expanded participant circle, particularly people with disabilities. So that's something I think that also makes rowing an attractive sport.
Is it an expensive sport, Marisha, or how accessible is it for people who maybe want to get into it?
You don't have to have any equipment other than, some suitable clothing for going out, really at most clubs. You show up, you don't own your own shoes, you don't own your own oar if what you're doing is the sweep events, right, the 4s and the 8s and even the pairs. If you're sculling, if you're someone who rows on your own in a single, most clubs will have club singles, but if you want to get serious about racing or if you want to get serious about, having a boat available to you all the time and something that's set up for you, measurement wise, then a lot of people invest in a single, and those can be very expensive. I know that, at a basic level, you can always buy a used boat, but they do seem to retain their value. And so at least in my area, my neck of the woods, to get a used single, you're probably looking at $3,000 or $4,000 for a boat in decent condition, plus another, close to $1,000 for rowing sculls, the oars themselves. And so that's a significant, even for a used boat, that's a significant investment. And to buy new, you're looking in the $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, $12,000 to get a brand new single.
And I want to talk about the organization that I mentioned earlier that
Sure.
you have started. But before I do, can you give us a sense of what you would consider to be, say, your 3 main career highlights from rowing, Marisha?
Oh, career highlights. I would say certainly the first time. I think back in 2003, and getting back into rowing and going to the U.S. Masters, and we did very well in our 8s down there. We won, I think, a couple of categories, and so that was, when I think of it, for me, it was, wow, I love this, and I'm really motivated, and I see it as a highlight because that experience that summer has kept me going, right? It reintroduced me to the sport and got me motivated again. I would say after that would be we put together a crew from Toronto area rowers, and the club is called the Toronto Sculling Club, and these are all local women my age roughly, and we put together a crew in 8 and went down to the head of Charles and raced in a very competitive category of the 40 plus 8, and this was in 2009, and we won. In our first time down there, and that's a very highly competitive category, continues to be, and that was a career highlight, and that has also kept me, sticking with that program every fall. We've won more than we've lost, but we haven't won every year, and every year you want to come back and do it a little bit better. And then I will say the third career highlight is then applying my legal background and also my experience as a volunteer board member for a board of directors to put my hat in the ring, and I was elected as a director of Rowing Canada Aviron, which is the national sport body for rowing in Canada, and that has been far more satisfying than I could have imagined, and has really opened my eyes to how important rowing is in Canada, how Canadian rowing is, what Canadian rowing is, to see the kind of structure of rowing on a national basis from the inside. It's been something that has challenged me as an individual. My portfolio with Rowing Canada is the safe sport. And so this is something that is a real touchstone right now. It's a real topic of conversation around the world at the international sport organization level, at the Olympic level, at national level, and for all ages, right? You talked before about injury as a master's rower. Well, prevention of injury and education about, how to take care of yourself as an athlete, how to train properly, and that's part of safe sport, and drug testing is part of safe sport. Understanding the pathway towards athlete development and excellence, that's part of safe sport. Protecting, creating a safe environment for children to play sport. We've heard some unfortunate stories recently in Canada with regard to predatory individuals who have sexually assaulted essentially children. There was a report, a 20-year review of the number of coaches who have been convicted of sexual crimes against children in sport, and that has really galvanized the federal government and all of the national sport bodies to step up and say, we need to look at what is safety in sport, and we need to take action. And so to be a part of that is something that, for me, I feel that I'm in a position to accomplish something, and it's been really challenging, but I feel that I'm making a positive contribution, and that really calls together my experience in sport throughout a lifetime, my experience as a board member for boards over the last 25 years, and my experience as a lawyer. And that kind of how I approach things as a lawyer, contributing to the development of policy and procedures and processes. This is where I'm sitting right now.
Well, 2 years ago, you co-founded the Masters Women Competitive Athlete Network with Jeannie Ellis. How did that come about?
Mm-hmm. It's actually kind of a funny story. I was driving. I was on my way to a hearing, and I was listening to CBC radio, and there was a woman who was on the radio, and of course now I can't remember the acronym exactly, but I think it was Single Women with No Kids, or Single Women. Yeah. Anyway, with no kids. Swank, I think, was somehow how it came out, and this woman had founded this group. And primarily a social group in opportunity, for women of like mind and similar life situation to get together. And the woman had said, we've got chapters in Toronto, and I think they had chapters in Los Angeles. And I remember thinking, well, I don't know that would be a reason why I would connect with my friends. And it struck me as like, well, like you reflect, right? I'm sure I'm sounding judgy, and I don't intend to, but it was sort of, well, how do I connect? How would I connect? And it came out, it hit me like a thunderbolt. I actually stopped my car and said, wow, I don't know of there being a collective or an opportunity, a network or a forum for Masters women athletes who compete. Being in my car and driving, I didn't have time to pull out my computer or whatever. I did it that night, and I discovered, there really wasn't an organization in place where I could meet competitive women or talk to competitive women from a broad cross section of sports, right? So I talk to rowing women all the time, but I don't talk to mountain bikers. I don't talk to bowlers. I don't talk to swimmers. I don't talk to tennis players or skiers, but there are women who are like me, who get up early in the morning, who train, who have a goal, who are learning, have created their own ways of balancing life, right? And one of those ways that is a challenge, but it's also a way of balancing, is through sport for me. And I thought, you know what, I want to hear how other women do this. And maybe I can learn something from it. And so I talked to Jenny, who is, one of those amazing people that you meet in life that is boundless energy and is always a very positive person and a very creative thinker and knows her way around the interwebs. And so I talked with her and I said, what do you think about this? And she said, I like it. Let's do it. And we had a lot of fun sitting down, creating our website, figuring out social media and, coming up with the name and what would be an acronym and buying our domain name and buying the rights to the photographs, et cetera, and the images that we use. It was a great learning experience for me. And then you make it, what's the phrase, build it and they will come. And we built the website and we thought, okay, well, let's talk about, let's try and gather people through Facebook. And so we've used that platform and that's been, something of a success for us. There's always room to grow and build. And I'm hoping, Chris, in talking to you, that other people might say, hey, we want to find out about, what is this Masters Women Competitive Athlete Network? And you can find us on Facebook. So, or look us up, and we've got a website, and we'd love to hear from anybody. And it really, is about connecting women, providing a forum for women to talk to each other. Some of the ideas that we had were having calendars of competitions, which we continue to do. We share articles. I sometimes get information about surveys and studies that are going on, science studies that are going on about Masters athletes, and I pass those links on to our network, because I think that's an area of research that continues to grow, understanding competitive, the aging athlete, if you will, as and what is our capacity and capabilities as we age, and just talking to people and cheering people on when they share their good news stories with us, like, hey, I just came back from such and such a competition and I set this title, or I won that title. You've got a little cheering section of people who know what you go through to be able to achieve something in a competition, right? We appreciate the journey of training, that commitment to a goal and achieving that goal. All of us in the network, no matter the level of achievement that we've had objectively, but all of us understand what it is and what it means to a person, to a woman, to balance her life, balance family, balance career, balance all these other things, and continue to compete in sport. So that's been really gratifying for me to see. We have some plans around still to organize some in-person events, and that will happen. But for the time being, this kind of organic process, as we're calling it, is working for us. So.
Well, we will certainly put a link in the show notes accompanying this episode to the Facebook page and your website, Marisha, and spread the word. Now, before you go, I want to hear what your life goals are now for the sport. What's on your bucket list?
Well, there's this sport called coastal rowing, which has been around a long time. And, I as I was telling you, every third weekend in October, we head to Boston for the head of the Charles. And I can tell you, 6 or 7 times out of 10, you show up and it is bitterly cold and rainy down there. And I was looking at the pictures of coastal rowing, and they seem to hold competitions in California and Barcelona. And I thought, maybe I should revisit this whole fall rowing thing and find a warmer destination. So that's something that I'm starting to look at. It's a totally different approach. I mean, yes, you're still going backwards and you've got 2 oars, but you're out in open water, and it's a buoyed course, so it's kind of like the St. John's Regatta where you go around a buoy and not a straight line of racing, and the conditions that you're racing in, you're facing currents and waves, and there's no lanes. So there's some contact between rowers and their shells. But it looks, from what I've seen and what I've heard from people, that it's quite an exciting sport. And given where I row in Toronto, we row, most of the time it's flat water within the breakwater where we row. So you get good conditions, but just outside the breakwater, well, there's a whole lake that's available, and sometimes it's just kind of fun to head out beyond the breakwall and see where the day takes you, kind of thing. And you can certainly do that in a coastal rowing boat.
Yeah, and it may not involve 4 a.m. alarm either, and the water will be warmer for sure.
If I ever make it to Barcelona,
there you go.
Yeah, it'll definitely be warmer. Yeah. So,
super.
But it's like change is good, right? And so I think this will be something interesting.
Wonderful. Well, Marisha, thank you so much for coming on the program and sharing your story, and the very best of luck with all your future rowing endeavors.
Thank you. You too, Chris. I really appreciate what WISP is doing. It's that opportunity to talk about hopes and dreams for the future in sport is something that motivates me. So I appreciate this opportunity.
Conversations from the world of women's sports. This is WISP Sports Radio.
And as I mentioned, you can find a link to the Masters Women Competitive Athlete Network at their Facebook page and their website in the show notes accompanying this episode on wispsports.com. Just look for the Bolder Woman under the Listen menu. And whilst you're on the website, be sure to check out some of the other coverage of women's sports around the world, from podcasts to videos, athletes' blogs and articles. And as always, follow us on social media at WISP Sports. If you'd like to contact us directly, you can drop us a line to info@WISP Sports. We always love to hear from you. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, that's info@wispsports.com. Until the next time, thank you for listening and supporting women in sport everywhere. Goodbye for now.
This is your moment.